30 minutes starts now. Hey, welcome. This is an experiment that I'm doing. If this goes well, there'll be more of them. And if it doesn't go well, this is going to go away. But the idea here is that I'm going to do something in a long format. The idea being 30 minutes. And the challenge being if I can talk for 30 minutes straight and keep it interesting. So that's the goal. To further make things hard for myself, I've prepared a little bit in terms of topics and things like that, but this is definitely not scripted. I haven't even outlined this, so this is very, I guess you could say improv. Improv might be a good word, maybe. But the idea there is try to be interesting for 30 minutes. Now, why would I do this at all? I mean, of course, there's social media. There's lots of things available to me. There's posts I could make and photos I can upload and stuff. But why make a 30-minute recording? I think there's a lot of qualities that you get when you're hearing someone's voice, or better yet, if you're seeing them and just interacting like people do, right? There's nothing wrong with text because I love written word, and sometimes I feel like I can express myself better in writing than I can speaking. You'll notice when I'm talking, there's a lot of ums and pauses, and I'm thinking, and sometimes I get on a roll and I've got enough words to push out my face to fill up the space. But other times, I'm really kind of grasping for what do I have to say. And if I can write, especially like if I'm writing an email or something like that, I can take hours to write an email that can take maybe 10 minutes to read. I think maybe people don't realize that when they're reading my emails, just how long I've sat there trying to get every sentence to like the maximum potential. And that's some of the great things about writing. Unfortunately, there are a lot of problems with writing, and I just mentioned one of them. One problem is that when you are trying to get everything perfect, there's a lot of production time compared to how long it takes to consume it. I think another one that's kind of comparable to that is a movie, right? Like a movie can be beautiful and just like amazing to watch, like 2 hours of just like the best stuff. But you know, it doesn't take 2 hours to make a movie. It doesn't even take 2 days to make movies. A lot of great movies take in excess of 2 years to make. So, yeah, there's this imbalance between how much time it takes to make it and how much time it takes to consume it. And that's not limited to movies. A lot of times that happens with writing too. But that's not even the worst. I think the part that I want to focus on is just how there's almost like a tone that gets set or an expectation that people have, and a lot of times you're reading something, you're reading a book, and you kind of expect like a very authoritative voice, right? And maybe this starts from when we're reading books and there's like this omniscient narrator, a narrator who's kind of like in everyone's heads and knows everything's going on and telling us, the reader, it's like, and then Harry Potter was thinking this, and then so and so was thinking this, like this narrator can kind of like go everywhere and see everything, and we as readers just kind of go, yeah, okay. And that works. And I mean, that works also like if you're reading a book that is like a reference material or some kind of very authoritative book. If you're reading whether it be like the manual for fixing a car or reading a dictionary or an encyclopedia, like you're in an encyclopedia and you're reading about the platypus, usually the tone and the way it's written is very authoritative and kind of teaching you, like, platypuses do this and they do that. And you're like, oh, yeah, you don't really question it. And more importantly, you don't even really think about the life of that person. Like, it's not even like that's really being spoken by someone who has a life, who has a job and a house and a car and blah, 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 blah. The words kind of have like a sort of astral projection, where they're not, the words themselves and the ideas are kind of like released from this like mortal body or whatever, and they just kind of become the idea, like they kind of stand by themselves, and the person that spoke really fades away, right? And you're just left with those words. I definitely think that happens a lot in writing, and in the context of social media and media in that vein, that can really be, how do I say this? It can be a bad thing, basically. It's the simplest way to say it. It can be a bad thing. Because I think we need to remember that most of the time when someone's just speaking their mind and stating their opinion and stuff, I think it needs to be taken with a grain of salt. All right, and that really goes for everybody. I mean, it even goes like if you're a head of state, if you're a CEO of a giant corporation or a president or, whatever you are, you're just a person. And we got to all remember that everybody that is human, all has flaws, right? And it seems like it's easier to remember that kind of stuff when you're talking to the person, like when you're like in a room with the person talking to them, and of course we have lots of telecommunications, so you could be video chatting, FaceTiming with someone, or you could just be on the phone with somebody. But as the form of communication gets more and more abstract, and I think like the most abstract is written word, unless you want to consider like interpretive dance or something. I mean, that might be the height of abstraction. But as you get more abstract, as you get more away from as people being in the room, I think as you get more abstract, you lose that ability to kind of remember that, like, this is just a dude, and this is just what he thinks, and this is just him talking. And I mean, sometimes that's really useful, especially when someone's just totally talking out their ass. Because I can't tell you how many times I've listened to people talking out their ass. And it's so much easier to accept when you're kind of just like sitting there talking to them, at the risk of sounding really arrogant. It's kind of like you can hear them and you're like, yeah, well, I mean, that's just, that's kind of what I expect from you. And I know that sounds really cocky, and I'm sorry. But, sometimes that is, sometimes it's just par for the course. Sometimes you're just talking to someone who just like, they have a lot of crazy ideas, a lot of silly ideas, you know what I mean? And they're just saying what they think. They're just being very forward or very open. And I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with people saying what's on their mind. I don't think that a person needs to make a big disclaimer, saying this is just my opinion and my opinions do not reflect the opinions of blah, 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 blah. I feel like people ought to be able to say what's on their mind, and just having an opinion isn't the same as being abusive or, I don't know. I'm not trying to open a can of worms about the state of dialogue in the world today, and in particular in social media. But as I say that, like I'm not trying to open a can of worms. I do want to acknowledge that, and frankly, I do want to I do want to publish more. I don't want to stop at just this one recording, and in the future, I do want to dig into these things more. About how people talk to each other, and the state of discourse today. So, yeah, I mean, in summary, the reason I'm doing this as a recording is so they can do 30 minutes as opposed to 140 characters or whatever it is that's short and bite-sized and gets people's attention. Because you really can't fit big ideas into a tiny, narrow space. And I do think also that when you're hearing a person talk, it grounds it a little bit more. And even if they say something, if you were to print out a transcript of everything I just said so far, I'm sure there's some small selection you could make that really characterizes me as an asshole. That if you take out everything else I said and you just zero in on just this sentence or just this phrase or just this set of words, it can look really bad. And when you take those words and you separate them from the person, it's really easy to judge it on its merit alone, and then somehow work backwards from there. This tiny little unit, this set of words, this is bad. So who did it come from? It came from this guy. This guy's bad too. And things like that happen all the time. I think it's around us all the time. And I think that's why I think, yeah. Can you tell that this is improv? I think that's why it's important to do things like this, to bring the human element back into conversations, so that we can all be a little more human. So I mentioned that I want to do more of this kind of stuff, more publishing, more recording, and I've been influenced a lot lately by a number of different videos I've seen. And whenever I publish this recording here, I'm going to try to do some kind of link to some of these other recordings that I'm mentioning. In particular, I want to talk about a YouTuber by the name of Chris Raygun. He just posted a video recently called The Soft Sabotage of Lofty Expectations, and I'm going to link to that. I'm just going to summarize it. I'm not going to play any part of it. That's just going to take up my time. But what he's basically talking about is that he's a YouTuber and he's been doing this for years. And when he started out, he was a little more comfortable just doing low production work. I guess what I mean by low production is exactly what this is. It doesn't take a lot of work or a lot of equipment or a lot of planning to just turn on the microphone and go. But it does take a lot of work to, say, write a script and set up all different camera angles and do all the video editing. And, if you have other people involved, actors and so forth, basically like I talked about earlier, like a movie, he talks in this video about how he was really inspired by people who came to YouTube and saw it as an opportunity to do a higher caliber of art, right? I mean, I remember when it was so much more common on YouTube to just have people just talking into their webcam in much the same way I'm talking right now, no edits or anything. At the beginning of the recording, you see them turning it on, and at the end of it, you see them turning it off, reaching at the camera or reaching at the, whatever. Very low production production effort, production labor. I don't know, but what he's talking about is he was aware of other creators who treated YouTube like it was like a film festival or something, who would make really kind of high quality stuff, and that was what really motivated him to get into it. And although I think he says that his earlier work, wasn't, it took him a while to build up what he does and how much production he puts into it, all those kinds of things. And he was more comfortable at the beginning doing something that was kind of low effort. Now he's been doing it long enough that he'll put in a bunch of effort and still say, is this good enough? All right. And what this video that I'm referencing, the video I'm referencing, he's kind of going back to his roots and it's just him and the camera and a little bit of editing. You can tell like he's clipped out parts, but basically he's kind of getting back to his roots. He says it's so that he can tell himself or prove to himself it's okay to make something that's not like high art, right? Like he doesn't have to make every video a masterpiece, right? And I like this video a lot. It's been inspiring in a number of ways. But in one way in particular that this rings true with me is kind of the idea of taking a whole lot of time to make one small thing. I think I do that a lot. And it's exhausting. And that's kind of the message of his, is that it gets to be really exhausting always trying to be your best all the time. And I do think that social media in general kind of brings that out in people, which brings me to another YouTube video that I've watched recently that is relevant for this. This is a video by a gentleman whose name is escaping me at the moment. His channel's name is called Veritasium. But he has like a secondary channel. It's the number 2 Veritasium. So the primary Veritasium, he tends not to get very meta. By meta, I just mean like kind of behind the scenes and talking about YouTube and things like that. He's very like straightforward on his primary YouTube channel, and by straightforward I just mean like, here's the content, this is the show, this is the whatever. He's not usually getting all like, hey, I'm a YouTube creator and this is what it's like as a YouTube creator. He tends to keep that stuff over on his second channel. I really like when creators do that. They have like, this is the public me and this is the less public me, or like the more private me. I don't know how you say that. So it's on his second channel and it's called Anti-Social Media. And to just really quickly summarize what's going on over there, he's just talking about how social media has, for better or for worse, and spoiler alert, I think it's for worse, and so does he, but it really, social media doesn't, it's not an invisible medium, right? When I say an invisible medium, I mean like when you pick up the phone and talk to your grandmother or whoever you're, talking to, you largely get to like ignore that the phone is there. And obviously that's not true if the connection is bad or things like that. But like a really good communication medium just kind of gets out of your way and lets you do the communicating without really acknowledging that's there. When you have to really think about the fact that it's there, I feel like it isn't a good way of communicating. And what he's talking about in his video here is just basically how it's so hard to ignore social media when you're on social media. Or another way of saying it is like, instead of like just thinking about what are your friends doing and talking to your friends and stuff like that, you're kind of like, how is this system working? How are people gaming this system? He talks about like how he sees some friends take a photo of some event or something like that, maybe like a nice moment at home having dinner. And what he's thinking about is like, why did you set up the camera? Like, why did you take a photo of this moment and share it on social media. And there's no doubt that the reason for that is because there's a whole lot of gaming to the system going on. Like why does this photo get likes and why does this get likes, and just likes and shares and comments and all these things that these platforms will they'll deliver all these metrics to you, and a lot of people just see it as a game and want to climb up that leaderboard. Like, how do I get the high score? How do I get up here? And there is no question in my mind that these social networks want that, right? Like they want the people who want to climb up the leaderboard, and although sometimes it doesn't seem that way, if you look at sometimes the things that certain platforms will do that really knock the legs out from under creators, it does seem like are you really trying to help them or not? And obviously the answer is no. Those businesses are trying to help themselves. They want to get advertisers and they want to get money and et cetera, et cetera. It's not like Facebook and YouTube and Twitter exist for the greater good of humanity. They're businesses. But sometimes the game that you are playing aligns with their bottom line, and when it does, then they want to promote that. They want to promote you playing the game and being a winner, right? You know, but that's not really what communication and socializing is about. Like I don't believe that people should be about that life. I ultimately believe that you can be about whatever life you want. Like if it's your life, if your pursuit is to get 1 million subscribers on YouTube, or to get all the friends on Facebook, or whatever it is, I don't care. Like whatever makes you happy doesn't take anything away from me most of the time. And this would be one of those. Like this isn't hurting me if this is your pursuit to be, to have all the numbers on all the social media. Like, go for it. But I don't really think that that's what socializing is about. And socializing has been on my mind a lot lately, because this is kind of like the record scratch, like the changing gears rather suddenly from social media into like personal things. But yeah, I haven't really had a very what's the word I'm looking for? I haven't had a really fulfilling social life. And to be honest, I don't really know when is the last time I had a really fulfilling social life. Because I can look at it and go like, it hasn't been this good lately. But as I think back and think back and think back and think back, I can just remember more and more times where I've just been kind of like feeling lonely or feeling empty or just feeling like really unsatisfied. And it's like, man, the more I think about it, the more I go like, man, this has really been a problem for a long time. So I think that what I want is to build better social circles, and not just the circles, not just the people who are in them, but maybe more so. Maybe what's more important, not maybe, definitely what's more important is just like the way that socializing happens. And I do not have enough time in my 30 minutes to like really unpack what that means. But what it means, the short abbreviated version, is that the tools that are available, or the networks that are available, they really just don't offer quality socializing. All right. So what I'm actively looking for in my own time is like how to do that, like how to like really have like quality socializing. And I think that's going to be a topic that I talk about again and again and again. So hopefully you're not bored already, since I'm just scratching the surface. But I'm actively working on, what are some better alternatives, right? Like, I'm not. I'm not coming at this like, oh, I'm gonna make the next Facebook because I'm gonna be the next Mark Zuckerberg and be the next, billionaire. I'm really looking at this like, well, obviously these companies are good at making money, but they're absolutely shit at offering us like really quality interactions with each other. So, what actually would be good? And if you know anything about me, or maybe you don't, but like I am heavily invested in internet technology. So this is not me announcing that I'm going all Walden Pond and I'm gonna like throw my smartphone in the river and live like a mountain man because all technology is awful and yada yada yada. That's not the announcement at all. Um, to be honest, the internet as we know it is like a tiny, 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 tiny sliver of the internet that is possible. And I'm not even talking about like moving heaven and earth to make things possible. I just mean that the technology is capable of so much that the things the internet that we know day to day, uh, it's just like one one out of like billions of possibilities. It's like having uh, it's like having the entire catalog of all music ever written, uh, but you only listen to Stairway to Heaven. You know what I mean? Like if you only listen to one song out of potentially millions or billions that are available. Uh, so as a web developer, as a programmer, I really want to investigate ways to use these really robust technologies that we have, and maybe make some better social media. But that is getting a little ahead of myself because development does take time, and it's not like in a few weeks I'm going to roll out the next Facebook. Don't expect anything like that. Really, what this is an announcement of anything is just my intention. This is something I'm studying. This is something I want to understand, and maybe more so, I want to emphasize the motivation behind it because, like I said, I'm not interested in this as like $1 billion idea. I'm interested in this because I need better socializing. You know what I mean? Like the social networks that are out there and everything that's available is just really unsatisfying. You may have noticed that I was really active on Instagram for a while, and because it really did initially, initially it was satisfying to get followers and get likes and stuff. But after a time, it was so much time and effort being spent on like picking out just the right photo, taking just the right photo, trying to craft it all perfectly. And I really felt like that video by Chris Reagan where he's saying that he felt like everything that he put out there has to be top quality, you know. So I guess kind of following suit with him, I kind of went silent for a while lately, which is something he's talked about doing, like spending all this time in the lab, and all this time recording and writing and I don't like this, throw it away and whatever. I've done a lot of that myself with Instagram and kind of gotten burnt out on it, and I guess I'm feeling a lot of the same feelings that he talks about. Like this is, this is not a good way to do this. Like, I can't always be my best. I can't always be on. So, I guess I'm kind of following suit, just like making something a little sloppy, making something a little more natural, trying to bring out my natural, real self, because I really feel like that is a cornerstone to quality socializing, is being ugly, being stupid sometimes, being human. I really think that human element needs to come out and not the perfect beautiful part. You know what I mean? Because we're not all perfect and beautiful all the time. We're mostly human most of the time. So that's really what I want to bring out, and I hope that I can do more of that. So that's it for now. Thanks.